More now on that stunning leak of a Supreme Court draft opinion suggesting the court will strike down Roe v. Wade this summer.
The draft opinion was written by Justice Samuel Alito and obtained by Politico, but a lot can change before a final ruling is issued.
Ryan Owens is a professor of political science at UW-Madison, a former Republican Attorney General candidate, and an expert on the Supreme Court. Ryan, good to see you. Welcome to Live at 4.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. Before we talk about the potential implications of this, let's talk about the leak itself. How unprecedented is something like that? And how many people would have access to see a draft opinion?
Sure. Well, so I'll take that first part first. How unprecedented is it? I mean, it is incredibly unprecedented. And, you know, I've told people I think whoever leaked this should be disbarred. Should not be able to set foot in the Supreme Court again. The degree of egregiousness that this showed was just absolutely mind-boggling. It has never happened like this before, ever, in the history of the court. In terms of people who had access to it, you know, you're looking at the 20 to 30 law clerks, the justices, and a handful of court staff who may have access to it. So it's not a huge pool, and I think they should be able to identify who did this, not necessarily easily, but I know the marshals are working on it right now.
Does this have the power to change how people view the Supreme Court in terms of it being an apolitical body versus a political body?
Well, it's tough to say. You know, there are two questions. Like, one is it the leak that's going to influence people's perceptions, or is it going to be the outcome of the case? I mean, certainly, I think we anticipate people's reactions to the outcome of the case to be different as a function of their agreement with it. That's no surprise. But the leak itself, I think, you know, it's incredibly troubling. You know, we've heard about the breakdowns in democratic norms and institutions over the last 6 or so years. This is a pretty tremendously bad example of that. No way this should happen.
What would be the immediate impact, do you think, if the opinion as written holds here in Wisconsin?
Well, most people right now are looking at the statutes that are on the books, one of which was passed in the mid-19th century, which prohibits abortions. It predominantly targets abortion providers, although there are provisions in the statute that would punish females for getting abortions. But if you kind of move down a little bit in those statutes, there is a provision that authorizes women to get therapeutic abortions if necessary to protect their lives. So I think there's going to be a lot of action in the courts about what that definition means in the state courts here in Wisconsin to figure out what that definition means.
You know, a lot of people are already talking about the ripple effect of this in terms of contraception and also the same-sex marriage ruling. What's your take on that ripple effect?
Well, the court in this draft opinion, and certainly during oral argument as well, tried to go out of its way to say, if we pull back on this, that's it. We're not talking about anything else. Now, people have said, well, if they undo this, they're sort of undoing the rationale for same-sex marriage, things like that. The one thing that does differentiate this from those cases is that this, of course, involves the taking of a life. And I think people, if they want to separate this from those other areas, that would be the grounds on which they would do it. Now, if we want to talk, go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, if we want to talk about the implications of this more broadly, I think one of the things we have to look at is, state elections. If the court does go through with this and undo Roe v. Wade, these decisions are going to go back to state legislatures. These issues will become hotly contested, both in, I think, the congressional elections, but also in state legislative, gubernatorial, and judicial elections.
The conversation will continue. Ryan, we appreciate your time very much. Thanks for joining us today.